Welcome to session 6 of our SEPAC summer school. And today we'll be continuing our discussion of how SEPACs can use family engagement by talking about reciprocal communication. Within the frameworks of family engagement here in Massachusetts, there is a goal, the second goal, which is to build reciprocal and balanced communication, not only with the families in your community, but with your school district. So it's that creating that sense of information flowing back and forth between these two constituencies that's going to help your SEPAC be successful. Really, it's all about sharing ideas, getting direct feedback, giving feedback, exchanging your perspectives. And this method or this philosophy around communication is really going to help you build the relationships that you want and trust. And out of that trust comes more collaboration and more understanding. So we know that communication is a key element for SEPACs. So today, the learning objectives, we'll hope you'll be able to understand what is reciprocal communication, talking about developing an outreach plan and why that's key to long-range planning. There should be multiple channels of communication so that you meet people where they're at and help them move forward. The concept that you need to work with other people, other organizations, other institutions in your community to really help you get the word out. And then I think as all of this is really important is that you take a step back and see where we effective in our communication strategies. What do we need to adjust? Where do we need to maybe realign ourselves or find a new method to reach the people that we want to? So that process of evaluation is integral to any plan that you set up around communication. So what is this reciprocal communication? It's really sending your message out clearly to others while also taking in their responses into consideration so that you're informed, so that your communication goes out, but then you are reflecting back on how this is perceived by the people that you want to listen to you. So at the basic level, it's just letting your needs be known and communicating out. But as we build a real robust form of reciprocal communication, it's that trusting relationship where people who have different perspectives, feel very comfortable sharing their feedback and insights with you. And so therefore it's going to create, richer communication and communication that is meeting the needs of not only the families in your school district, but your school district, because you need to be communicating with multiple players within the school district so that they understand what the SEPAC's all about and they can give you feedback. So that's really part of this whole process of reciprocal communication. And I hope you'll start to use the dual capacity framework. This was a framework that was done several years ago. It's now in version 2, and it's really to start to reinforce family engagement practices. And I think what's interesting is it recognizes that there are some barriers to communication, especially between families and educators, that they might start in different positions, and how do you bring them together? So that's creating, essential conditions that you can start to listen to one another and respect one another and build that relationship. And that communication can really help to reduce or breach the barriers. So this is a graphic that's available online, and there's the link to it. But read a little bit about the dual capacity building framework, because it's really about that family-school partnership. But the elements there, I think, can go across the board in lots of different relationships. So I think SEPACs might want to think about developing some type of a communication plan. It's really targeting your communication to reach the audience that you want to reach. It also gives you a structure, how often, what types of communication will happen. It can be short-term, long-term. If you're doing something long-term, it's really understanding how you're going to raise your profile within the community. And I think that's a problem for a lot of SEPACs, in that people don't know about them or don't know how to connect with them. And so having that effective communication plan will help move the SEPAC forward in identifying who they are, what they do, and people then will come to them with their ideas and concerns. So that helps you fulfill that advisory role that you're chartered to do under the law. You know, it's really long lasting too, so that people start to identify with the SEPAC and its goals. And a plan should also have ways for which people can give you formal and informal feedback, lots of different options for people to communicate and to get back to the SEPAC, so that this plan is probably developed and then looked at on an annual basis to see how effective it is. And that's part of that evaluation process, that you, look at what you have done and see if it's working. So I think one of the first things in your plan would be to define who your audience is each time you have a communication to your different communities. Like, who is your target? Are you just working with families? Are you working with community organizations, with educators or administrators within your school district? There's lots of ways to communicate, and your target will help you identify how you want to do it. Your message needs to be thought about. We're in this age of 20-minute attention spans, because there's so much going out there on social media that people just don't have the time anymore to read lengthy things. So, is it short and concise? Is it getting your message across? Is it making that great first impressions that people like stop and say, gee, this is something I need to find out more about, or this is information that's important to me, and I want to share it with others too. So making that great first impression. And I think the SEPAC should have a consistent message, so that the branding of the SEPAC would be there, and just have it clear of where this message is coming from. We talked about different channels, meeting people where they're at, and not everyone is a strong reader. So how do you have visuals and pictures that convey similar ideas to help people understand, especially if English is not their first language? The UDL, Universal Design for Learning approach, where there's multiple means to connect. So often your information can have links to video, to pictures, to other information, to other languages, so that you meet people where they're at and make sure that you are, conveying the information to them in the method that works best for them. And I think, you just need to have a very relatable kind of communication piece, so that it works for your audiences, so that they see this as a valuable piece of information that they want to learn more about and ask questions, because that's really the way you're getting that feedback, and you're getting people to engage with you. We talked about multiple channels, so I've got the gamut here from written communication, oral communication, and things that are online. Lots of ways to do written communication. We are moving away from that, I think, in these online COVID times, that it's not as accessible for people to post flyers or to read flyers in public spaces. So you may want to shift a little bit more to an online type of way of communicating. But there's still some very valuable written things. I think most SEPACs develop a one-page kind of folder or handout defining what is the SEPAC, your goals, how to connect with you. If you have a list of the dates that you meet, so that people can see that there's a regular basis for your group to get together and you're established. I think you can also start using some of the local print media. There might be a community newsletter or local newspaper that could publish a story about the SEPAC, what it's all about, how to join. But also if you're having a speaker or an educational event, they can help promote that so families know about it and can attend. So looking at all the different ways that you can send written communication. Text is becoming new for a lot of SEPACs, and whether you want to start to communicate with your members via text messages. It really depends on your needs assessment and whether families have identified that as an effective means of communication. I also like oral communication, that one-on-one connection, whether you make a phone call, you see someone across from a resource table at a school event, or you're making a small presentation and answering questions, that oral kind of direct way of talking to people and explaining your goals, your ideas, your concerns. It's another way of communicating. And I also think for some communities, it's very effective to use local radio, especially for the non-English speaking families. They use radio a lot, and just find out if you can connect to one of your local radio. Out. Cable TV has been wonderful in terms of sharing recordings of programming, especially educational programming for SEPACs, and that's another way for you to get better access and better ways of getting your word out. And if the local cable TV films one of your presentations, as long as the presenter agrees to be videoed, then that all works. Online, I think, is a big way for you to have a presence. It's a communication kind of method that meets people where they're at in terms of the time that they can access the information, because they can do it at 6 a.m. or 8 p.m., whatever works for them. You can have a website that's either run by the SEPAC or the district has a part on their website that they devote to the SEPAC, or at least some general information about the SEPAC. And we know that a lot of SEPACs are using social media and going online with Facebook to use that as a support group that shares information and resources. It doesn't discuss SEPAC business, but it's there to connect people, to bring people together, and to hopefully answer people's general questions about where to find some resources. Many SEPACs are on other platforms, either Twitter or have a Google group or some other type of listserv where they provide support to families. So it's not a formal SEPAC business meeting. It's more done as a support group, but very effective. And those platforms are free. So you're really trying to increase your distribution and get others to find out about your SEPAC. That's the broad kind of reach of a communications plan. And I really think you can't do it alone, because the SEPAC does not have access to all of the contact information, the names and addresses and email addresses of the families that are receiving special education services in the district. And so that how can you really do that greater outreach as you build your own communication list? And so work with the other parent groups in the district. They're the ones that reach broader audiences, and you're a subset of that group. So talk to the presidents about being part of their communication or presenting at one of their meetings about the SEPAC. Other SEPACs in the region, connect to them, because families ask questions and they can help promote your programming, or you can send your families to their programming, especially now that we're online and doing things on virtual platforms. The principals are key in terms of connecting you to their school and their community. So find out from them how you can best promote your information through their newsletters or in their informal coffees. I love community groups. Their interest is in building community in your towns, cities and towns, so that talk to them. How do you get connected? How do you maybe have a partnership so that they're helping to drive families to the SEPAC? our local library used to have our flyer, our SEPAC flyer in the on the bulletin board, but they'd also have copies down in the children's room, and the children's librarian would be happy to share those with families who had interest and help identify that the SEPAC was a resource, especially with parents of young children. There are family resources centers throughout the state. Early intervention is done on a regional basis throughout the state. So SEPAC should find out the contact information for who's local for them and make sure that you start that conversation, that reciprocal communication with those organizations to help support them and for them to support you. So it goes that two-way street. Faith organizations often will share information or have bulletin boards, and it's a place where communities in the community where families gather. So that's another good place for you to connect. There might be a local recreation place, like a community pool, a local YMCA or WCA. Where are families meeting and where are they connecting? And even other nonprofits. Just find out who's local, who's in your community, and how can you help promote their activities while they promote your activities. It's all just building this network so that you have good communication to support families. And I think we talked a little bit about this, is about measuring your effectiveness, at least on an annual basis. So understanding if your communication plan is working, are your objectives being met? Did you have a goal? Have you met it? And trying to measure that. And how will you measure that? Often a school committee would ask, how many people are in your network? How many people are on your Facebook page? They're trying to measure, the strength of your communication network. And so you need to collect some data. How many copies did you send out, or emails did you send, or flyers did you post? How many things were disseminated and where? How many people were engaged as a result? Registration for events. How many people visited a website, or how many people are following you on Facebook? Is there a conversation happening? Do you have a general email where people can send in questions? And how often is that used on a monthly or an annual basis? And if you do any kind of survey, what were the responses? What's some of the data around that? And that can help you kind of as you're looking at measuring your effectiveness, and can inform a further survey saying, we tried this, it doesn't seem to be working. What else will work for you? And to, really have that information flow back and forth between your audience and your SEPAC so that you are effective. And you're working hard. So it really should be something that's meeting the needs of your families. So where do you start? I looked at a website, and I love the fact that they had kinds of zones of, engagement and zones of practice. So I always suggest that people start with the low-hanging fruit. What's easy to do? What can you do and get accomplished, and build some credibility around your SEPAC, or at least have people start to understand and connect to SEPAC. So having that one-page brochure is a simple task that you can do, have it, and it's now in multiple places in your community. We've talked in a former class about doing that needs assessment or survey so that you can get a sense of where families are and what they need, so that you can develop that communication plan. And if that's not feasible right now, then have a focus group and at least get some people together and start that dialogue and start to understand, what's going to work best for people. And if you bring people together, you might identify a couple of people that might be willing to help and start to organize some things. So that's getting you started. A little bit more of a difficult task is to really, formally recruit and train volunteers for the different tasks, because everyone's very, very busy, and it's really hard to get someone to sign up for, another project to do. But it's got to be something that's valuable for them. So if you bring them together, explain what you need, set some parameters around their work, I think you can get some people to volunteer and help out with tasks. And I think part of that is starting to create an online presence, because that's really the most effective way to reach as many people, is to have some kind of engagement on social media, and find out the people who really like to do that, and can help you with it. And just you can have multiple people administer a Facebook group and start to share some resources. And then you'll hear different things through your social media engagement. And then I think the hardest thing to do would be to, to run an event in your community. It's finding, how to do it, who's going to be involved, what the focus of it is, what resources you might need. There might be some fundraising, but just getting that all together, all of the details, those tasks are usually more time consuming. But it's really also introducing you to community groups that you don't have a relationship with, and they might be able to endorse your organization or partner with you or help you. So it's always looking for ways to connect. I think SEPACs, need helpers in the game, and it's always looking for who can we build that relationship with, so that we can have some help to reach our families, to provide resources and information for our families. So it's really a start where you think you can accomplish something, and move forward and use that to build on the next way of doing outreach and doing kind of communication within your community. So I have a couple of resources here. There's the MassPAC website. We have within the SEPAC basic toolkit a section on publicity, so you can read about that. It covers a lot of the different ways that I've talked about today to communicate. If you've never done any kind of an evaluation of anything that you do, maybe start simple with a SWOT analysis. What are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that you've encountered with anything? Document those, talk about them, and it's a flow of a continuous feedback, so that you use the information to improve and move forward. So that's just a really quick, simple way, if you've never done one, to have a tool, and they can get that. And I think also that SEPAC should look to talking with other SEPAC leaders about what's worked for them. And there's a lot of conversation on the closed Facebook groups. I've listed 3 here that are, statewide and have a large following. And there's a lot of conversation and sharing of resources and materials, so that those all require you to request to become a member of that group. And I believe they all have a couple of questions that you need to answer just to prove you're not a robot. So take advantage and at least have somebody from your SEPAC involved in these regional, statewide Facebook pages and closed groups, so that you can follow the conversation also. And so thank you, and please share any questions that you have with me via email. That would work best. We look forward to seeing you at SEPAC Summer School session number 7, which is all about identifying your members' strengths and using those to make connections within your community. So thank you, and have a great day.